We don't get a ton of no-thought spots in MLB DFS, situations where you can look at it and without thinking for a single second realize, okay, this is a spot I want to turn to within my lineups. We do get that tonight with Gerrit Cole facing the Reds. The weather at Yankee Stadium is pretty hitter-friendly. That's kind of the one downside here. But outside of that, it is a situation that checks every box. So we know that Cole is in a no-thought spot and the guy we want to use for tonight. The question is someone else there who can allow us to pivot, to deviate in tournaments and still feel good about the upside within our pitching slot? Maybe not. It's very possible there is not. A lot of times I will swallow that chalk if I think that that gives me the best route to upside, but we got to at least go through that thought process first and decide who will grade out best. Let's dive on in, talk about Cole, and get you set for this Tuesday night slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberfire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, here to break down Tuesday's 13-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. The one weather spot is one I briefly discussed there. It is at Yankee Stadium, where the winds are out to center at 12 miles per hour. It's also pretty warm, pretty humid in New York for today, so I would boost hitters for the Yankees and the Reds a bit. Not enough to cross out Cole, but potentially to get us on some bats on the other side of that game, which we'll talk about later on for sure. We'll do a full breakdown of the pitching stacks and more in just a bit. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Our PGA DFS preview of the Open Championship is posted via myself and Brandon Gadula, breaking down our favorite golfers in each salary tier for St. Andrews Old Course. That is up now, both on the FanDuel YouTube page and on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Brandon's cat, June, made an appearance on the YouTube side of things. So if you want to see a cute cat, you can check that out there on the FanDuel YouTube page, but over on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get that and every other DFS podcast we do, MLB, PGA, UFC, NASCAR, and NFL just around the corner as well. Hit that wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of the Open Championship, it's set to tee off this Thursday, and FanDuel Sportsbook is making sure you have more ways to win with its major winner insurance. It is simple. All you have to do is place a pre-live bet on any golfer to win the 2022 Open Championship. If your bet loses, but your golfer finishes inside the top 20, you'll receive a refund up to $25 in free bets. This offer is only available through 8 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. Actually, I don't believe it's probably before then, given it's in Europe. So it's going to log at a tea time on Thursday. So just get your bet in before then. Make sure you head to FanDuel Sportsbook and place your bets today. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max free bet $25. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-89-9789. In Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700, or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate, Gerrit Cole, shocker, highest salary guy in FanDuel for today, checking in at $10,600. Logan Webb is $10,000. Chris Sale, $96,000. Chris Sale's back. That's fun. Luis Garcia's $95,000. We got Josiah Gray at $93,000. Spencer Strider at $91,000, and Jordan Lyles at $9,000, with David Peterson, Noah Syndergaard, Chris Flexen, Corey Kluber, and Jose Barrios potentially the others $8,000 or higher. Could be Kevin Gausman for the Blue Jays. I probably wouldn't go there regardless. So could be Gausman, depending on how his ankle feels. I'm probably going to cross off the Jays either way, even though the Phillies are missing some couple key bats as they head to Toronto for today. The obvious thing here is that Cole is the top arm of the night, and I can't find any reason to question that. I think we can spend a minimal amount of time on this one. Facing the Reds, 93 WRC plus against righties with a 23% strikeout rate. Not a super powerful team. That's all plus. And Cole is obviously elite. He's up to 12 starts with more sliders in his repertoire. He has a 2.74 skill interactive ERA in that time with a 33% strikeout rate. There is some not ideal batted ball data for Cole, which explains the occasional rough start like that Twins outing he had was not ideal, but I'm not sure how likely he is to hit that in this matchup. Upside here is obviously sick because, again, 12 start sample with more sliders. He has four double-digit strikeout games in that time, and he had 9 in 2 others. So he's had 9+ strikeouts in half of a 12-start sample. There has been a bit of a dip recently in strikeouts, but a lot of tough teams in there. The Astros, the Guardians, and the Red Sox, all low strikeout teams. The Reds will strike out. So Cole's the top guy in the slate. Don't overthink it. Use him as your number one guy for sure. The question is, can we find anybody who is on par with Cole? And I think the second slot is more interesting, but I also think it's more clear. It's pretty clear here regardless. I'm going to put Spencer Strider number 2 on my list for tonight behind Gerrit Cole. Strider's at home against the Mets, and it's not about the matchup here. I think the matchup actually kind of stinks. The Mets have a 19% strikeout rate against righties, 115 WRC plus. So I don't want to use pitchers who are facing them, but Strider's just really good. We got 7 starts on him with a full pitch count allotment, and it's a decent sized sample. And his skill interactive ERA at that time is 2.31 with a 40% strikeout rate. That is sicko level stuff from Spencer Strider. Now that number, the strikeout rate, is a bit misleading because he's not very efficient with his pitches. He's averaged 4.37 pitches per plate appearance in this time. For context, Cole is at 4.06. A lot of guys are under 4 in that department. So it does present some risk. He's not getting as much bang for his buck on the pitches he throws because he's averaging more pitches per plate appearance. But Strider still has hit double-digit strikeouts in 3 of 7 starts in the span. He's had 11 and 12 across his past 2 starts, and that 12 strikeout game was against the Cardinals, who are actually kind of similar to the Mets in terms of the matchup difficulty. Strider's at home tonight. Even with the inefficiency in his pitches, I've got him projected for 8.4 strikeouts tonight. That is right behind Gerrit Cole and number 2 on the slate. Cole is a better play because the expected runs allowed are better. Overall, the matchup is better, but Strider's legit. I am fully okay using him here because I believe in what he's doing. I think that the matchup is bad, but not bad enough to force him off our radar. So Spencer Strider, I will put number 2 behind Cole. Not going to have as much of him as I have Cole, but he is good enough to justify inclusion in your player pool for this slate. For the value play, I want to stick in that same game. The Braves are facing David Peterson, who is getting a ton of strikeouts right now. So it's a risky matchup again with the Braves, but I'm still fine with it. The Braves have a 120 WRC plus against lefties so far this year with a 189 ISO. They're pretty lethal in that regard. And Peterson's had his issues. Even recently, he's let up some earned runs. But man, like the strikeouts have been there. He re-entered the rotation 5 starts ago. And when he did, we saw Peterson cut way back on his sinker usage. Instead, he started throwing more four-seam fastballs and more sliders. His sinker doesn't really do a whole lot for him, so this is a very good switch. His four-seam fastball and his slider are both better pitches, and it's led to strikeouts. He has a 32% strikeout rate in the past 5 starts. He's hit 7+ strikeouts in 4 straight. That includes a double-digit game against the Rangers. The results were not always good. You know, he's had some earned runs. He's letting us some hard contact, but I think some of that's luck related because the fly ball rate for Peterson in this sample with fewer sinkers is still 19%. It's like he's like serving up meatballs here. So the Braves are dangerous, but they will strike out. So it's not a high floor move. It's a risky one for sure, but it comes with upside. And it's potentially enough upside to hang with guys like Cole and Strider if things go his way. I think Peterson is a quality play here. I will talk about how sometimes with value plays, I will discuss them for your benefit, but then I will be transparent and I'm not going to use them tonight. I'll probably use Peterson. I think there's a very good chance I do. I want to stack Coors Field. I think that he's pretty legit. So even with Cole and Strider being there, I think Peterson makes a lot of sense. I think Josiah Gray's leads to consideration as well to get some strikeouts, but to me, it's Cole 1, Strider 2, and Peterson 3. I think that all 3 of those guys belong in our player pools if you are multi-entering. As far as stacking goes, I mentioned Coors Field. I think the Rockies are okay facing Mike Clevenger, not like a standout stack by any means. I very much prefer the Padres and will be high on them here. They're facing Austin Gomber, who still hasn't quite regained his old form. Again, I keep talking about this, but last year, like he had a stretch where he was legit. We're up to 10 starts now since the velo stabilized for Gomber. He has a 4.71 skill interactive ERA in that time with a 15% strikeout rate, which means he's letting up far too many balls in play for Coors Field. That's led to an 8.00 ERA. Some of that's due to Coors, for sure. Tough place to pitch, but he's had some blowups on the road as well. Gomber's led him multiple home runs in 4 of those 10 starts. So I do hope he regains his previous form. He was pretty fun at times, but he hasn't done that yet. The Padres, not a great offense against lefties, but also not terrible with a 106 WRC plus. I think there is more than enough here to justify stacking the Padres once again for tonight. With it being a lefty out there, I would bet we get Jorge Alfaro in there. He did play last night, which makes me question this, but it's a lefty. He's $2,800. He has a 277 ISO versus lefties. Strikes out a lot, but also a lot of hard contact. So if Alfaro is in there, not a guarantee, again, given it's a lefty, but I'd be okay with him for sure if he does play. Ha-Seong Kim, another guy who didn't start last night, but did play eventually. He didn't get a plate appearance, so I'm not sure what his health is. But if he plays, he's pretty solid against the lefty at $3,300. Luke Voigt is $32, which is pretty low. Manny Machado, obviously, as well. I think the Padres really solid top option for stacking for today. The Dodgers are facing Matthew Liberatore, and there is risk in stacking against him because he has some prospect pedigree. He should be a good pitcher long term. Just not sure if he's there yet, and I will stack against him in this spot. We got 6 starts in Liberatore in the majors. He has a 4.74 ERA in that time. That is what it is, but comes with a 5.07 skill interactive ERA and a 5.49 expected ERA. A lot of that is because Liberatore is walking too many guys. He's letting up a lot of hard contact, not getting enough ground balls either. So it's a bit surprising his ERA at 4.74 isn't even a bit higher, honestly. He has done well in some pretty tough spots. He had the Braves last time out, held them scoreless for 4 innings in that start. That's pretty impressive because the Braves are tough against lefties. And he can certainly do that again, but the underlying data says that we can stack against Liberatore here, which means the Dodgers, to me, belong number 2 on our list and a rock-solid stack. Not on the same level as the Padres because they're at Coors, but Dodgers still pretty solid for today. I think the big question with a Dodgers stack against the lefty is whether you can trust Justin Turner to start hitting for some power at some point, because thus far, his ISO versus lefties is 0.98, and that's across 94 plate appearances. ISO stabilizes pretty quickly. 94 plate appearances is not a small sample, and he's not doing great. He does have a 40% fly ball rate. He's making some hard contact. So I think the power will come eventually. I will use him here under that assumption, but I at least had to question it because, sample's getting bigger, results not getting better. So I think he'll hit for power eventually, but not fully convinced. I will use him here. I think that it will happen, but just keep in mind that the numbers so far for Turner are not ideal, so maybe not as much of a focal point as some of the other righties on this Dodgers team. As for our third stack, let's take advantage of that weather at Yankee Stadium. There is a lot to like in Graham Ashcraft's data in the big leagues. Batted ball profile, pretty nice. It says his ERA actually should be better than what it currently is, but I do still feel like we should stack the Yankees against him here. And the weather does play a role in that. It's hot, it's humid, it's windy, and those are all good conditions for hitting. And we've seen bad conditions get to Ashcraft previously. He let up 7 runs to the Cubs in one of those win games they had a couple weeks ago, let up 6 to the Brewers at Great American Ballpark, 4 to the Cardinals in St. Louis. Even with the batted ball numbers, you can get to this guy. That's especially true, and this is a key for the Yankees. It's especially true with right-handed batters. Right-handed batters have a 45% ground ball rate versus Ashcraft versus 61% for lefties. And the hard contact numbers soar as well, and the results match the peripherals here. Before that Cubs game, dug into his minor league splits to see if this was the case there as well, and the reverse splits were present with Ashcraft in the minors too. So I think that if you look at Ashcraft on the whole, it's not going to look like a great stacking profile because the ground ball rate and the hard contact will be low. But the Yankees, if you look at just the righties, I think that they can do some work here. And the Yankees do have some righties who can hurt you if you make mistakes. So I think the Yankees belong within our top 3 stacks tonight, especially if you key in on just the righties within that lineup. The primary benefactors here are Josh Donaldson and Gleyber Torres. Obviously, Aaron Judge and Stanton can go deep against anyone. at any time. But Donaldson and Stanton, or Donaldson and Torres, they could use that bump. Donaldson, 39% fly ball rate versus righties this year. Torres, 44%. That's pretty good. I think they are both focal points for tonight. And honestly, like if you need a one-off, I would not be opposed. I've been having a lot of issues trying to fill second base. I'm sure all of you felt the same thing at times so far this year. Torres, 3,000. Donaldson, 31. I think it makes sense to give them a shot, whether it be within the stack of the Yankees or as one-offs to round out your lineup. Things to watch for today. Pretty excited to see Chris Sale back in action for tonight. Probably wouldn't be on him for DFS tonight, but I just don't think he's fully stretched out yet. He went 52 and 75 pitches in his 2 rehab starts that had pitch counts. I have Sale projected for 85 tonight. We saw last year, they never really let him go fully. I know it's a rib injury this time, so maybe they'll be more aggressive with him, but I just want to see it before I buy in. It's 85 pitches for Sale tonight for me. Excited to see what he does, and I hope he comes back at full strength because baseball's better when Chris Sale's pitching well. So I'd love to see him back in his old form tonight. Don't mind the Cubs offense against Jordan Lyles. They're just a bit too righty heavy for me to do a full stack here because Lyles has led up a 387 slugging percentage to righties versus 515 against lefties. So Ian Happ, Rafael Ortega, they both work as one-offs, but tougher to get to a full stack given Lyles, how decent he's been against righties so far this year. I'm okay at the Rangers again tonight. That stack worked last night, obviously. They're facing James Capelli in this time. He's gotten some better results of late, but still minimal strikeouts, a lot of fly balls. The Rangers offense is starting to come on a bit right now. So I'm very okay with them if you want an extra stack that might be a bit less popular. It's not going to fly super, super under the radar, but I think they're fine. So the Rangers, to me, a quality option for tonight if you want an alternative for stacking. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls for today. 2 for 2 last night with Jay Cronenworth and Randall Grichuk. Going back to Coors Field for the fun one, and I'll go Jorge Alfaro for the fun one. But the problem with that is he's a catcher, and I've had catches and dinger calls, and it's no fun to you if I give a dinger call and the guy doesn't want to play. So right now, if Alfaro plays, dinger calls Aaron Judge and Jorge Alfaro. If Alfaro does not play, I will go Torres as the fun one and Manny Machado as the boring one. So depends on if Alfaro plays. It's kind of 4 different guys. I'm okay with all of them, honestly. I think they're all kind of fun personally, but we'll go with Aaron Judge, Jorge Alfaro as the default. And if Alfaro does not play, we'll flip the Yankees and Padres around, go with Torres as the fun one and Machado as the boring one. That is all that we have here for today on the solo shot. Again, decide how you want to handle Gerrit Cole versus other guys. I think that there is enough in Strider and in Peterson to justify using them. I'll still be highest in Cole for sure, but for cash games, use Cole, but I'll get them in there for tournaments. I think they're good enough for that, but it's totally okay if your process differentiates from where I'm viewing those 2 pitchers. Do not forget to check out our PGA DFS preview of the Open Championship on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcast, just search for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Hit subscribe. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Wednesday's slate. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.